All right, so we got yet another update here on the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation package as the corporate ghoul from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, is back at it again, feuding with Chairman Bernie Sanders over the overall price tag and some of the provisions that are going to be in this or may not be in this bill. So basically what sparked off this most recent thing was Bernie Sanders actually wrote an op-ed, like the absolute Chad that he is, wrote an op-ed in West Virginia in a local outlet to try to put some of the pressure on Joe Manchin to fall in line with the $3.5 trillion number. And so he basically went through and gave all of the details and expressed how West Virginia constituents, as we're about to get into, overwhelmingly support the policies that are within this bill. And he was railing against Manchin, and Manchin didn't like that. And so basically this is what his response was to Bernie Sanders. And I just want to talk about this because it's completely ridiculous at surface value on so many levels. But he says, this isn't the first time an out-of-stater has tried to tell West Virginians what is best for them despite having no relationship to our state. Okay, pause. Let me just tell you an interesting statistic that I myself actually found out recently. Bernie Sanders in 2016, and granted there is a difference between national elections and Senate elections, but Bernie Sanders in 2016 in the Democratic primary against Hillary Clinton actually got more votes in West Virginia from West Virginia constituents than Joe Manchin did in his most recent Senate election. Okay, so for Joe Manchin to come out here and say Bernie Sanders has no idea what West Virginia voters want, he literally in one of the most recent elections got more votes than Joe Manchin did himself. So that's just point number one. But he continues saying millions of jobs are open, supply chains are strained, and unavoidable inflation taxes are draining workers' hard-earned wages as the price of gasoline and groceries continues to... The price of gasoline and groceries are going up because we just went through an entire pandemic and our global capitalist supply chains have completely collapsed, okay? The gasoline prices and the grocery prices are not going up because people are trying to invest in infrastructure and jobs and climate change and lowering prescription drugs for the American people. That would not cause inflation, okay? He has absolutely no idea how any of this actually works, but of course, he's just going to blame it generically on spending big money and not, you know, the tax cuts for billionaires that he supports or the endless subsidies to the fossil fuel companies that he owns. None of that is apparently something that causes inflation. It's only when you talk about actually investing directly in the American people that inflation somehow becomes a problem. And so he continues saying that Senator Sanders' answer is to throw more money on an already overheated economy, while 52 other senators have grave concerns about this approach. Okay, so first of all, throw more money on an already overheated economy. Who's saying the economy is overheated? Number one. Number two, if you think the economy is overheated and you need to pull some money out of circulation, guess what? You can cut the military budget, or you can do exactly what the fuck this $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill does and tax the rich. If you're concerned about too much money in circulation, take it from the right sources. Take it from the wealthy. Tax their assets, okay? That's what you would actually do. But of course, Joe Manchin doesn't want to raise their taxes, okay? So it's this ridiculous contradiction that he has been abiding by throughout this entire conversation. And again, the other important part of this, he's siding with the 52 Republicans. So Joe Manchin is literally saying the other 52 senators, the Republican Party senators, have grave concerns about this, right? So he's associating himself with the 50 Republicans in the Senate and Kirsten Sinema, explicitly saying, I am more of a Republican than a Democrat, and yet still they're calling him moderate, even though he and Kirsten Sinema together are opposing what the overwhelming majority of the American people want. So it's just, again, completely ridiculous, but I guess I appreciate the honesty of Joe Manchin siding with the other 50 ridiculously corrupt and rapacious Republican senators, as he is one of them. But he continues saying that, to be clear, again, Congress should proceed with caution on any additional spending, and I will not vote for a reckless expansion of government programs. I wonder if he's going to say that same thing the next time the military budget comes up, but no op-ed from a self-declared independent socialist is going to change that. So Joe Manchin coming out and getting into a little bit of a fight here with Bernie Sanders, and again, this entire argument that he just put forward is eviscerated if you just look at public polling, as Brian Tyler Cohen did down here. So a majority of West Virginia voters support the Build Back Better plan. You see this, okay? It's a net plus 43 likely West Virginia voters. So what the fuck are you talking about, Joe Manchin? Bernie Sanders and this $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill is more in line with what average West Virginia voters want than what you are doing, okay? You're not representing your constituency. You're just corrupt, okay? And we know about all of these corrupting influences, okay? Second of all, just to give you more of a perspective on what he wants to cut out of this, okay? So first of all, he just said he wants to cut the child tax credit, okay? The thing that supposedly lowered child poverty by 40% in the United States during the pandemic. This is what Joe Manchin wants to target, taking an explicitly pro-child poverty stance here. So Senator Joe Manchin has told the White House the child tax credit must include a firm work requirement and family income cap in the $60,000 range. $60,000 for two parents working full-time is what Joe Manchin thinks is like luxurious. People can't use assistance for paying for childcare if they're making 60 grand as a household. It's completely ridiculous. This is coming from a literal millionaire coal baron, okay? This guy has concerns about entitlement mentality as he continues trying to subsidize the fossil fuel industry that he is making millions of dollars from. But $60,000 apparently is too much for parents to deserve assistance in paying for childcare. And also, the work requirement is entirely bullshit because a large portion of this is specifically so parents can afford to take care of their kids, right? So parents could maybe afford to buy their kids food or send them to an actual childcare that would end up allowing them to maybe be freed up to go and work. But having a work requirement is completely ridiculous. All that's going to result in is it's unnecessary means testing that will just result in children starving and being under-resourced and underserved. That's the only thing that this will end up doing. And of course, that's what this demon, Joe Manchin, is pushing for, okay? So again, completely ridiculous, arbitrary means testing austerity for absolutely no reason other than cruelty. Again, from these corrupt demons, cruelty is always the point. And so that's one of the things that he was pushing for. Another thing, surprisingly, Joe Manchin's objection to clean energy programs threaten Biden's climate promises. So he has a problem here with the program in question that is $150 billion in clean electricity performance program, which would financially reward utilities that transition to renewable energy and penalize those which do not. Okay, so first of all, it's $150 billion over 10 years. That is like not even like 1%. I don't even know. I can't do it off the top of my head, but that's like 1% to 3% of our yearly military budget that would be spent on this specific provision that he has a portion of. So it's not a problem of spending, okay? This is significantly cheaper than what we're spending on the military, what we spend on our tax cuts for the wealthy, okay? And he has a problem with $150 billion going towards, again, financial incentives towards renewable energy, okay? So even this is a half-measured approach, right? If we were going to be serious about tackling climate change, we would be nationalizing our energy sector. We would be ensuring that we aggressively transition away from fossil fuels, not asking politely and trying to provide some incentives for them to do so. We would be ending all subsidies to the fossil fuel industry, completely ending our attachment on fossil fuels and moving towards this as aggressively and quickly as possible. So even this half-measured response is too much for the coal baron Joe Manchin. And again, I don't need to remind you guys, but Joe Manchin makes $500,000 a year from one of the dirtiest coal plants in West Virginia that his son runs, okay? So he makes literally more from his coal plant than he does from being a senator, and people are wondering why his priorities are the way that they are. But again, not even the only story that we had on this. Mr. Manchin has received more campaign donations from the oil, coal, and gas industries than any other senator. So this guy is swamped in fossil fuel cash more so than anyone else in the entire country, okay? And this is the guy who is getting to set the terms of our climate change legislation. I could not create a more ridiculous and absurd example of how the US government functions if I tried, okay? This is where we're at right now. The entire legislative agenda that is overwhelmingly supported by the American people, that is already the watered down, compromised legislation, is going to be completely held up by one guy who is a corrupt millionaire oil baron who yells down on his constituents from his yacht when they go and try to ask him questions. It's fucking ridiculous. And so what do we do in this situation, okay? It seems like Curse's Cinema is almost unreachable. It seems like Joe Manchin, his corruption is going to continue to be there no matter what we do. But call their bluff right now, okay? This is good advice here from David Sirota. I liked what he had to say in this op-ed, so I will go ahead and read it, put it down in the description below. But call their bluff right now, okay? It's time for a Democratic leaders to make Manchin, Cinema, and every other senator vote, and not on some gutted half measure, but a real $3.5 trillion bill. So this is, at this point, what I think needs to be done, okay? Bring it to a vote and dare them to tank it, all right? Progressives, you stick to the messaging. You stick to the fact that this is overwhelmingly supported by the American people. We also knew, due to recent polling, that the American people basically don't know what the fuck is in this bill in the first place, okay? So keep going and selling on the actual policies, because the policies are what are overwhelmingly supported by the American people. So if you stick to the messaging and you actually just bring a vote right immediately, it's better for it to get tanked by these two and make them look like the corporate ghouls, the corrupted, ridiculous demons that they actually are, and make them do that and make them defend their positions. The big problem we have right now is that all of this is happening behind closed doors. And if it's happening behind closed doors, there is no public pressure that's able to be wielded against these people. Joe Biden should be coming out railing against them every single day. I haven't seen him confront them in any any way, shape, or form throughout this entire debate. So it's just completely ridiculous. But if you actually wanted to apply some pressure, you do that. You call their bluff, you make them vote on it right now, the entirety of the package, and then if they vote it down, then make them relentlessly explain to their constituents who support the $3.5 trillion bill overwhelmingly, make them go and explain to them why they're doing what they're doing. Because guess what? They don't have any legitimate explanations for their corruption.